Hello again. Welcome to part 8 of My Sister's Got a Spoon Up Her Nose. Right, I asked you for a prediction. Dad announced that he had a plan, and I asked you what you thought Dad's plan could be. Let's find out. We're down here, look. You'll never guess what Dad did for the race. The runners had gathered on the hospital car park, which was the starting point. There were all sorts there, fat, thin, young, old, men, women. Most of them were in running gear, but a few had put on fancy dress. One woman was dressed as a fairy, a very big fairy, and there was an Egyptian mummy, a pirate, and a fluffy purple penguin. At least, I think it was meant to be a penguin, but there was no sign of Dad. He had left the house some time before us, saying that he needed to get ready, so it was worrying when we couldn't see him. Mr. Tugg saw us and he jogged across. "Isn't your husband here then?" he said to Mum with a little smirk. "Chickened out, has he? Afraid I might beat him? I used to run for my school, you know." "Really? I used to run from mine," Mum murmured. But Mr. Tugg ignored her. "I was school cross-country champion 2 years running." "Aren't your knees shiny, Mr. Tugg?" observed Mum. And it was true. Mr. Tugg's knees twinkled in the sun, almost as if he'd polished them for the race. "My dad hasn't got twinkly knees. His are simply hairy, like a spider's." "He's chickened out," repeated Mr. Tugg. "I knew he couldn't take the competition." The starter bellowed some orders through her megaphone, and the runners lined up at the tape. "Where is he, Mum?" I asked anxiously. "Nicholas, I have no idea what your father is playing at, but he'd better run because there is a lot of money at stake here, not to mention family pride." "Where do you think Dad has gone? I didn't expect him to just not turn up." A loud horn blared and the runners set off. Mum and I watched miserably while everyone went pelting off without Dad. Why do you think Mum and Nicholas are feeling miserable? Something must have happened to him, or he'd chickened out, just like Mr. Tugg had said. It was horrible not knowing. So maybe that's why they're miserable. They're worried in case something has happened to him, or they're feeling let down because they think perhaps he could have chickened out. The race was circular, so the starting point was also the finishing line. Mum and I kept looking for Dad, but he was nowhere to be seen. I was desperately hoping he'd suddenly appear and go zooming after the others. After all, it wasn't too late to start until the race was actually over. But there was nothing. "Here come the leaders," Mum said gloomily. "Mr. Tugg's up near the front. I can tell by the moustache and the sun flashing off his bald head, not to mention his knees." The winner crossed the line. It wasn't Mr. Tugg, but he did come in fourth, waving both his arms triumphantly in the air. He came straight across to us, panting. Why do you think Mr. Tugg was so keen to come straight across to Mum and Nicholas? What was his reason for doing that? "Oh dear," he smirked. "Sorry your husband wasn't here." Oh, Mr. Tugg's gloating, isn't he? He's showing off that he's run the race and that Dad didn't. He's being smug. We were silent. We watched the stragglers arrive at the finish, mostly the ones who had dressed up in silly costumes, and then discovered how hard it was to run in a race if you're covered in bandages or you're a purple penguin. How ridiculous! In fact, the purple penguin was last, and it came slopping towards us on big, flappy feet. "Hello, Mr. Tugg," said the penguin in a very familiar voice. "Were you looking for me?" "It was Dad! We should have guessed." "Did you guess?" Mr. Tugg stepped back as Dad lifted off his furry head. He was sweating furiously. "Phew, it's boiling in here. Of course, you can't run very fast, but it was good fun. Well done, Mr. Tugg. You beat me. I did, agreed Mr. Tug, proudly straightening up. Of course, Dad went on. It was never a fair race, not with me dressed as a penguin. He mopped his face and grinned. Not really a race at all, was it? Now, if only you'd come dressed as a penguin too. Don't be ridiculous, snorted Mr. Tug. I'll see you at the swimming. You won't be able to hide in your penguin costume then. And he marched off. Dad looked at me and held out a hand. Gimme 5, he crowed. So, I wonder if you guessed that that's what Dad would do, or even if you didn't guess before I started reading, if partway through you worked out that it was Dad in the fluffy purple penguin costume. I have to say, I didn't work it out. I thought that Dad had either chickened out or, because Dad's such a silly Billy, got himself stuck somewhere, like maybe stuck in the toilet or had got lost. I didn't work out that he was the fluffy purple penguin. So, question number 1 for you. Why did Dad run as a penguin? That was clearly Dad's plan. Do you remember he said, I've got a plan? And his plan was to run as a penguin. So why did Dad run as a penguin? We know it made him horribly hot and we know it made him slow. So what was his reason? Question 2. Do you think it was a good idea of Dad's to run as a penguin? Do you think it was a good idea to run as a penguin? I look forward to getting your answers. Bye for now.